Vibey for our next panel. I am Kimberly Graham. I'm the Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer here at Tulane University, and I'm super excited about all the programming that we're going to have today right here in the A.B. Freeman School of Business. A big shout out to Dean Goes for hosting us today. So good afternoon and welcome. This is part of New Orleans Entrepreneurship Week. It's an exciting week filled of innovation and entrepreneurship. It's my great honor to introduce two remarkable leaders who exemplify vision, impact, and the spirit of innovation. They will uncover the essentials an entrepreneur must know to be successful. First, we have Tulane University's 15th president, Mike Fitz. Since assuming his presidency in 2014, President Fitz has been a driving force in elevating Tulane's national reputation, fostering interdisciplinary collaboration, and expanding the university's commitment to research and entrepreneurship. Under his leadership, Tulane has launched groundbreaking initiatives, including the Tulane Innovation Institute. It's designed to accelerate startup growth and commercialize research. His dedication to fostering an ecosystem of innovation has positioned Tulane as a leader in transformative education and impact-driven research. Next on our panel is Brett Hurt. He's joining President Fitz in this fireside chat, and he is a true pioneer in the world of entrepreneurship. Brett Hurt is the co-founder and CEO of data.world, a groundbreaking company dedicated to democratizing data collaboration. He's a serial entrepreneur. Brett previously founded Bizarre Voice, which revolutionized online customer engagement and went public in 2012. Bizarre Voice went public and achieved a valuation of around $1 billion. Mr. Hurt has founded and led 6 startups, including Coremetrics, which was acquired by IBM in 2010 for approximately $300 million. He is the author of The Entrepreneur's Essentials, Lessons for Startup and Leadership Excellence. Later, Mr. Hurt will also join us on the Tulane Venture panel after talking with Mike. Hurt Family Investment is an investor of 140 startups plus 46 venture capital funds. Out of the 140 startups, they've had 15 exits. As an investor, Brett has had 15 portfolio companies, with the latest being Verb in April 2023. He is a founding member of Capital Factory, a key hub for startups in Texas, and an investor and mentor to numerous emerging entrepreneurs. His deep expertise in technology, data, and business strategy makes him an invaluable voice in the world of innovation. He is a distinguished Aspen Institute Henry Crown Fellow. You might ask, what's his tie to New Orleans and Tulane University? Does anybody know? Yes? His daughter, that's right. She is an entrepreneur and a student here at Tulane. Her name is Rachel. Following this fireside chat, we are excited to present the Tulane Ventures panel, a dynamic discussion featuring key voices in entrepreneurship and venture building. This panel will highlight Tulane's role in fostering startups, supporting students and alumni founders, as well as driving innovation across the industries in our community. Brett Hurt will be joined by a distinguished group of entrepreneurs, investors, and thought leaders to share insights on launching and scaling successful ventures. So if you would please, a round of applause and welcome President Mike Fitz and Brett Hurt to the stage.
So first of all, thank you, Kimberly. And I want to thank you both for those kind words, but also for everything you have done with the Innovation Institute. She didn't mention it, but I think we won the award for the top entrepreneurial emerging innovation institute in the country. So I guess you get a prize for being an entrepreneur of entrepreneurship. So yes.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so
that's awesome.
Thank you. Brett, let me just say, you were the. I'm not going to go through Kimberly's, recitation of your incredible resume, but I just want to point out that there are two things that really make you the absolutely best person to kick this off. First is you are an incredibly successful entrepreneur. Incredibly, you've walked the walk and done it, but you've also thought about it. You've written books about it. You've reflected on what makes a great entrepreneur, which makes you the perfect person to start this. So I want to thank you, and let's give him another round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So let me start out with a question that sort of jumped out at me when I look at Brett's background. Brett's father was an entrepreneur.
And mother.
What?
And mother.
And mother, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Both.
your mother,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So you come by it honestly, really, as this. And your daughter is an incredible entrepreneur. So I say this as somebody, my father may have been many things, but he never would have been an entrepreneur. And the question is, how did you learn it? How did you pick it up from this family? How did you teach it?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say it's a huge, huge honor to be here. New Orleans has a special place in my heart, not just because our daughter goes to school here, but also because growing up in Austin was a very small town. It was actually the size of Anchorage, Alaska today, back when I was a kid. The way I know that was when we were in Anchorage, I was having all these out-of-body experiences. Like I was like, I'm in Old Austin, and I looked it up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the same population. So my dad would take us on just me actually would take me on these daddy-son trips to New Orleans where we would just eat great food. Austin didn't have a lot of great restaurants back then, but New Orleans was always the Epicurean kind of epicenter of the U.S. So it's a real honor to be here. I've always got a lot of beautiful memories here. So, I learned entrepreneurship by watching my parents do it, which is a great advantage I had that I didn't realize it at the time. My parents sold antique furniture. My dad invented the first halogen fishing light. He was like a celebrity in fishing circles. And so I grew up with just that kind of being normalized, and frankly, it being pretty humble. Like my dad would do things when he would drop me off at school, he would have a truck full of furniture, and he would yell out to all of my classmates, "Junk for sale, junk for sale." And it was very embarrassing. But he just, larger in life personality, and really kept me humble from a very young age. But I grew up, working with him and working with my mom. And my mom, the reason she was an entrepreneur is because she wanted to be a great mom. She wanted to really have the time to raise me and my sister. And so she actually, she graduated from UT Austin, top of her class, double major in 3 years. She's very smart, and got the dream job and dropped out of the dream job in a year because she wanted to be a very present mom and wanted to have control over her destiny. So I got to learn from them. I didn't know that was an advantage at all growing up. I'll tell you one little secret though. A lot of my friends loved my dad, and he's just my dad. So I was like, well, really? What do you love so much about my dad? And they would be like, well, my dad talks a lot about how much he hates his job. He's like, your dad loves his job. Like he's always, just laughing and having fun. And so that had an imprint on me that materialized much later. And I can honestly say that I've never started a business that I didn't have, true passion for and thought that it would make a real dent in the world and make some tiny, as Steve Jobs would say, some tiny ding in the universe, some tiny change in the universe. So I feel very honored to be here. And I just want to say, too, about Tulane that from the first time visiting this campus with our daughter, we just fell in love with it, my wife and I, my wife Deborah. And we thought, wow, this is going to be the perfect school for Rachel if she gets in. And it's just such an honor to be here. I mean, just so many family ties to New Orleans. And congrats to you guys for really becoming very innovative, having these types of days. and having a fund now and having students where entrepreneurship is getting more normalized for them, like it was for me, growing up. I'm a product of many, many, many entrepreneurs who have come to speak at UT Austin and in the Wharton School where I went. And I just basically am up here honoring them and all the lessons that they taught me. And that's why I codified it in the book, because I've seen those things not just work in my own businesses, but I've seen them work in the startups that we've invested in. That's why I called it the Entrepreneur's Essentials, the essential lessons that I've seen work time and time again.
So why don't we actually talk about the book, which is sort of, and what's great is you've done it, you know what it's about, and it's from that you extracted sort of the essential lessons of entrepreneurship and how to be an innovator. And I sort of, there are sort of 5 criteria, as I recall, for what makes you sort of a successful entrepreneur. Let me just go your business model, sort of a good team, a mindset, funding, and culture.
And culture, yep.
So, an interesting, I think being an entrepreneur is very different, obviously, than taking over an existing company. It's very different from being a CEO of some gargantuan entity. You really have to have a different mindset. What is it that, in a sense, makes great entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I mean, anytime I'm meeting with an entrepreneur, I'm running through those 5 criteria, and I've now seen at least 3,000 startup pitches over 14 years. So that forms what venture capitalists they call that pattern recognition. You can sense pretty quickly if someone has the potential to be a great entrepreneur, and there's lots of ways to assess that. Doesn't mean necessarily they're a great presenter. It just means that maybe they have a technology where you're like, oh, wow, right time, right place. I was telling President Fitz that the only time I recommended to a student that they actually drop out of school was when I was serving as entrepreneur residence at the Wharton School. And there was a student, Boris, who came up to me, and he's like, I've created a sports app on Facebook. It's the #1 sports app. And this was when Facebook was just a few years old. And I said, Boris, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anybody. You showed me a demo. I really think you should consider deferring, for the rest of your time here. Go and do that, and then, because you're at the right time, right place. There's a platform shift underway. I've seen this movie before. Facebook's going to be huge. The viral growth is just off the charts. And I was like, you can come back after you're a multimillionaire and finish your degree. And I was speaking at Wharton like 5 years later, and Boris made a beeline for me. And he's like, Mr. Hurt, do you remember me? I was like, Boris, of course I remember you. I was like, how's it going? He's like, well, I dropped out. He's like, I sold the company for millions of dollars. I'm a multimillionaire now. I finished at Wharton, and now I'm paying back, and I'm helping other entrepreneurs. And I was like, oh my gosh, how cool is that? So I mean, it's you're looking for timing of the innovation, of the change they're making in the world. There's companies that have a right time for that moment in history. Facebook was not the first social network. Google was not the first search engine. There's many, many examples of that. I mean, Dell was not the first computer company. Michael Dell is the wealthiest Texan. That was not the first computer company by any means. They had a really smart innovation where it was built to order. So I'm going through those factors, and the reason that the factor of mindset is really important is I've had many opportunities in my own startups to sell early. And that would have, gotten some high fives and felt maybe good from an ego perspective, and people would have been like, hey, that's great. But a great example was Bazaar Voice. I got an offer to sell it to a very huge company, a company everybody here has heard of, for $250 million. And I had the mindset to continue to go along with it. And instead, we took it public for over $1 billion 2 years later. And the amount of impact that had in Austin for the people that work there, is huge. I mean, there's been over 50 companies now started by former Bizarre Voice people. So think about the capitalist ripples of that. We were known as the best place to work when we were small, then medium, then large. So they took that culture. One of the biggest compliments they can give me is that they took that operating system. I mean, culture is just the operating system to bring out the best in people. And they took that operating system into their companies. And so I had that mindset. And by the way, that was not easy. There were many, many other people on the team saying, sell bread, like, don't be a fool, like, sell right now. Like, you know, this is an opportunity to go work at like one of the most prominent companies in the world. And, you know, they were gonna give me a global role where I would have been, you know, on the C-suite executive team. But I just knew that I wanted to take Bizarre Voice all the way and that it had that potential. And so that mindset's really, really important. And going through that, I get turned off if I am meeting with an entrepreneur and they're immediately thinking about how quickly they're gonna sell it. Now, in the case of Boris, I was actually encouraging him to drop out and sell it as fast as possible because I really did think like that was a moment in time where that made a lot of sense if you think about an app and how ephemeral an app could be on a place like Facebook. So I'm glad he took that advice and did that. But that, you know, he didn't need to raise any money for that. Like he had bootstrapped the company. It was not a company he needed to raise money for at all. So I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but if you're an investor making an investment in someone, you have to think that way because most investments don't succeed. Entrepreneurship is very hard and very humbling, but when it works, you know, you can create a Bizarre Voice type outcome where there's just massive ripple effects. But you're not going to create that if the person's thinking about selling it early. We had the opportunity to sell Bizarre Voice 2 for $25 million in the first year. Like, so think about if we did that. Like, people would have thought, oh, you guys are great entrepreneurs, and you sold it. But we created 850 jobs and, you know, offices all over the world and a real big impact in the way e-commerce is done. Bizarre Voice powers almost all the reviews that you see when you're shopping online. It's the Intel inside or the software inside that powers all of that in the world.
Now, I have to say, the word's going to get out at the sort of keynote at the beginning of this conference that the speaker said, drop out of school.
No, I didn't say that.
Now, what I just want to say, I want to give one other example, and I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
But we had a student at the Friedman School a couple years ago, actually came up to me as an alumnus last night, and he came to me literally right before graduation, saying he'd sold his app. He didn't tell me this, but others have claimed well over $35 million.
It's incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but he graduated. That's the counter story.
He did graduate.
He graduated.
Right.
He graduated. So it's not always better to
he had his cake and he ate it
He
too.
got his
I mean, remember that Boris did come back and
Yes,
he did finish
yes,
his degree.
yes, yes.
And I will say too that I've served as entrepreneur residence at both Wharton and UT. And at UT, when people would tell me they were going to drop out, I would ask them about the traction. I would tell them the story about Michael Dell, because Michael Dell did drop out of UT. And his parents, you know, he's Jewish, and his parents were very traditional. They wanted him to be a doctor. And they were like, you know, look, Michael, if you can sell $300,000 worth of computers this summer, they just picked a number that they thought was crazy, then we will forever leave you alone, and you can do whatever you want. And he sold like $500,000 that summer. Walter Isaacson actually talks about this in his book, The Innovators. And so, you know, you know, I tell them that story because I'm like, you know, I'm trying to be really polite, but you don't have the type of traction to drop out. Boris already had the #1 sports app on Facebook.
So I must say, just an observation about entrepreneurs. My father was a surgeon. And what you know about surgeons is they never want to make a mistake. They are totally risk averse. That is not the personality of an entrepreneur, right? You have to be willing to make mistakes. So I
That
think
is
it's
true.
that personality is hugely important. I want to follow up. You talked about, and you obviously took incredible pride in not only in waiting and not selling out at an earlier point, but also what that meant to the company and the positive impact that the company had,
Yes.
that it wouldn't have had if you sold out earlier, which is something interesting about entrepreneurs, which I think is maybe a little bit different than the run-of-the-mill sort of company executives. They are thinking very intensely about the social impact of what they're doing.
Yeah, which I think is great.
Why is that, do you think? And how do you think about it in your companies that you've been involved in?
Well, so my current company, data.world, is a public benefit corporation and a certified B Corp. And this interesting times that we're living in right now. There's a lot of kind of attack on people that are trying to be very intentional and deliberate in things, and you have to be very careful of that because the younger generation clearly wants big changes in the world, and that gives me amazing hope for humanity. Is that this generation is going to be the greatest generation that's graduating, and you all want to change the world for the better. You want to make the world a better place, and we need people to think like that. It's so important for people to think like that versus be depressed about the current. We need to manifest the change that we want in the world, and so I think that that's the greatest trend in business today. Now, you have to pair that with capitalist intentions of making a profit and creating a very valuable business model. And so really the solve is to do both things at the same time. Like social innovation cannot be an excuse to forget about the business model side. One of those 5 ingredients that President Fitz was talking about in that chapter of my book, I think that's chapter 19, is that the business model is actually the number 1 criteria for whether or not a company is going to be successful. And again, timing of that business model is incredibly important. Bill Gross, who founded Idea Lab, which became one of the original innovators, which produced Overture, which created the bid model on search engines, which then Google looked at and replicated to create their money printing machine. I mean, it's one of the most successful companies of all time. That idea came from Overture, which came from Idea Lab. And Idea Lab was involved in hundreds and hundreds of startups. And Bill Gross said that the single most important factor of all was the timing of a business. And I would just say timing paired with the business model itself. And so I love the fact that this generation is so focused on social impact. We have some serious problems in the planet that we need to solve. And the only way we solve that is if people are brave enough to step out there and try. And trying is very, very hard. It's much, much easier to go work at a big company and have the safety and security of that versus start up your own company. But one of the things that's so exciting right now is AI. And I actually have a very positive view on AI versus quite a few people. And the positive view is that I view AI as a great leveler and equalizer in society worldwide to manifest the change that you want in the world, because the barrier for creativity is absolutely being shattered right now. If you think about like my background, you could look at my background and say, okay, I've been programming since I was 7 years old, like I've been in technology the whole time, et cetera. And that could discourage you and say, well, I'm not going to be a tech entrepreneur. I know lots of tech entrepreneurs that don't know how to program at all. They know how to organize the teams and create that. But now, if you don't know how to program, you don't even need a CS degree to basically create a prototype that gets funding to ultimately create the change that you want in the world and have a proof of concept that you can go take to prospective customers. And that is a huge, huge equalizer, because what society needs the most is the ability to be creative. And if you think about the Industrial Revolution and different massive changes that have happened that have created lots of prosperity. I mean, capitalism has led to amazing amounts of prosperity all over the world, lifting millions, billions of people out of poverty, out of starvation. If you haven't read the book Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker, I highly, highly recommend it just to get your head in the change that's happened over a period of time. It's very easy to get dystopian and worried in a 24/7 media environment where the most negative stories are getting constantly amplified, and social media is just algorithmically trapping you in that kind of mindset. So AI is now going to create, in my opinion, billions of new companies, because these entrepreneurs are going to be able to exert their creativity without the barriers of, oh gosh, how am I going to even be able to do that? I don't have that skill set. I need to go get 7 years of training to do that. So that is a very, very positive change for the world. So you combine that with social impact, and we've got the making for a really positive future going forward.
I hope everybody appreciates what a fundamental observation that is. Everybody obviously is extremely concerned, questioning what will be the impact of AI and the destructive impact, the technological innovation. But you're really describing a change which will open up society to much lower barriers to entry to innovation.
Yes.
And it should empower all sorts of people to move forward, and literally could have lasting impacts domestically and globally. And that's an extremely important observation, it seems to me, and everybody should pay attention. And a perfect observation, I must say, for the start of this conference. Let me just say, we think also about the ecosystems of entrepreneurship, and everybody knows about Silicon Valley and Cambridge. You grew up in Austin, which probably when you were born was not a particularly entrepreneurial place, and you saw it evolve, right? While you were there, into sort of one of the great cradles of entrepreneurship. What produced that? What were the ingredients of that? Obviously, we're thinking about this from the New Orleans perspective that I'll get to, but what do you think drove that change?
Well, actually, it's very related to what you all are doing here with this day and these initiatives and the fund you have. The original thing that drove that very much preceded me and Michael Dell and other entrepreneurs there is that UT is a wealthy school and bought the original Cray supercomputers, and that attracted scientists to work on them, and then they were surrounded by Austin, and they thought, this is a really nice place, it's got a great live music scene. Well, we have something in common there for sure. And here we are, let's create companies. And that's very much how it happened in Silicon Valley as well. So that's what created that. I grew up, with an amazing mom. I dedicated my book to my mom as well as to my wife, the two women that really raised me. I can honestly say that because I've been married 28 years now. And I was a little bit rough around the edges when first got married, so Deborah had a lot of work to do. But basically, this society in Austin had already created programming user group meetings. And when I was 7, I learned how to program. My mom learned how to program with me. And then the most amazing thing she did was she told everybody I'd found my passion and just to allow me to do that. And as we've raised our kids, the number one thing I've tried to do as a parent is expose them to different things that they may be passionate about. And then if they're passionate about it, let them do that without prejudice and as much support as I can give, because that's what my mom did for me. And I miss her terribly. She's an amazing woman. And so she was able to drop me off at age 10, starting at age 10, at programming user group meetings, which was not very common in Austin, I have to say. Like, I was picked on a lot as a kid for being this way. And most people really did think I was ruining my life and would tell my mom that. So it took her a lot of courage and belief to know that I was living my passion and that things would be okay, because most people were telling her that things would not be okay. Like literally my fourth grade teacher, she told me this when I was in my 20s, took her aside one time and looked her in the face and said, "Your son is going to be a loser. He doesn't know how to do anything but talk about computers, and he doesn't know anything else." And so she said she turned beet red, and she was so angry that she didn't tell me that story until I was in my 20s, because she didn't want that to discourage me. And she told me once I'd already become successful too, because I'm a product of right passion, right place, right time. And entrepreneurship is always grit and luck. It's not just grit. I am very, very lucky too. Now, if I didn't have grit, I couldn't have been lucky, but it is luck, and I feel very blessed to be here with you all. So, so Austin had that going on, and what'll make this great in New Orleans and make this great at Tulane are initiatives like this. I'm a product, again, of many, many entrepreneurs who came to speak at the schools I went to, and that normalizing it for me. And one of the things that I realized, because I was trying to figure it out, I was like, what do these people have in common? Like one's like a school teacher background, one's like a jock background, one's like a professorial background. What is it about these people that made them successful? And the only thing I could really figure out is that they all had passion in common. They were really determined and passionate about their cause, and they had that grit. Of course, they had curiosity and other traits that lots of people talk about, but those two things they had in common, and they manifested the change that they wanted in the world. And people were smiling down on them, and they became successful. They had the right idea at the right time with the right people around them. It's always people around you, like my mom, that help you be successful. So that support that you're going to get here at Tulane is really, really important. And I love the fact that you guys have both this day and the Innovation Center and all these great initiatives. That's where it begins.
Clearly, we need more of your moms, because she's the guiding connection to all this. One thing you said, which we talked about earlier, which I found sort of fascinating, which is literally the sort of the music cultural scene in Austin.
Yeah.
And obviously something we have in abundance in New Orleans, and what the relationship that is to sort of a entrepreneurial culture. The question is there something about sort of music and other interests that literally are conducive to an entrepreneurial spirit and creativity?
For sure. Entrepreneurship is absolutely a form of art. And the more artistic the community is, the more creative the community is, the more the community encourages that collaboration. Creativity is always lots of people from very different backgrounds getting together and jamming together, whether it's jamming together in business or whether it's jamming together in a band, and producing something beautiful together. So entrepreneurship is absolutely an art, and artistic cities help with that. Hey, one thing I do want to say really quickly, because there's been a lot of promotion of my book, which I appreciate, I really do.
It's a great book, by the way.
And one thing I want to say about the book is, I don't make any money on the book. All the proceeds from the book go to support female entrepreneurs. But the other thing I want to say is that you can get the book online for free at theentrepreneursessentials.com. So everybody here gets the book for free. Everybody on the internet gets the book for free. And you can also chat with the book. It was the first book you could AI chat with, so you can ask it any questions. And it was the first book that AI podcast hosts. Then I created a whole podcast around it, where these two male-female versions. It's a great tool from Google called Notebook LM that probably a lot of you use for studying. If you don't, you should be. Upload your class notes into it and have it just tell you a story while you're on the exercise bike or whatnot. But all of that is also available for free too. So
let me just say, this has been extraordinary, but I want to draw a connection. We opened the Marshall Family Commons years ago, and it was a talk by Walter Isaacson, who literally talked about the spirit of creativity and how you produce creativity, talked about Leonardo da Vinci, and talked about New Orleans and how the quality of the culture was supportive of that. And here I sit next to one of the great entrepreneurs in the country talking about what produces that, says creativity through New Orleans and other things. I was going to look back because when Walter was speaking then, it started snowing down McAllister Walk, which I knew was a sign. So I said,
I'm coming in from Austin, so I'm not bringing any snow.
You're not bringing any snow. Unfortunately, March is not the time.
Right.
But just think of this as proverbial snow coming down. That was really wonderful, and I think everybody
Hey,
should
thank
give
you
you
so much. Yeah, appreciate it. And let me just say again, what an honor it is to be here, and how much I love New Orleans, and how much I really love Tulane. You guys have a very, very special environment here, and a very, very special leader. So thanks again. This is a really big honor.